Welcome to the Mission Field Media Podcast. My name is Brandon Hartun, and I use media to tell the stories of ministries and missionaries that are having an impact for the kingdom of God all around the world. This episode is sponsored by Club 1040. You can check out all the amazing things they're doing, like planting churches, planting Bible schools, raising up leaders in the Middle East, all kinds of amazing stuff, by going to their website, club1040.com. I highly recommend it. So don't forget to subscribe to the Mission Field Media Podcast and find us on all the popular social media apps like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and you can watch a video of all these interviews on our YouTube channel. In today's podcast, we're joined by Christy Wicks, who is the USA Teams Director for Club 1040 and who has been involved with missions for many years. Also, just was over in Lebanon recently. And she's going to turn the interview on me, and I'm going to answer some questions about my trip to Turkey, which I was working with Club 1040 and several different partners, and just our response to the earthquake over there, and just all the things that I saw and what we did. We'll get into some details about that. And she joins us today live via Zoom. Okay, we're joined here today with Christy Wicks, who is the new USA Director of Club 1040. Is that right?
I'm the USA team lead here in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. You're right.
Awesome. So just tell everybody maybe that never has met you before, like just a little bit of your background and how you got involved in missions.
Right. So missions is vital to the church. We have to grow in what we're doing. So it's been really, since I was a child, when we got born again, I was just 7. And then we found out about things of God, and that was exciting. Then we moved to Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and became part of a church that is very missions minded. And then as an adult, then I got to go on a couple of missions trips. And so one was to Samoa in the South Pacific, and they had started a Bible school on that island, and they needed a plumber to come out and do their dormitories. So my husband is a plumbing contractor and went and did their dormitories. Well, he didn't finish his project, and so he had went on one trip, and then we scheduled a second trip for both of us to go on. And so we went together on the second trip to Samoa, where we got to do hands-on, really working missions trip there with the people of Samoa. And that was just absolutely wonderful. So that was my experience, to spend, almost 2 weeks there on the island and getting to know the people. They've got their priorities right. They love God, and then they love their family, and then they work if they have to. And so their work ethic is high, but that's not their top priority. Where in America, it seems like work is people's number one priority, and then they try to fit in the other things. So that's what I found was just beautiful about getting outside of the culture of America and finding these other cultures who just need Jesus. And so we got to do that. And then my husband has gone on several working mission trips again to Panama, over to England when Club 1040, back before they were Club 1040, and they were a church there in England. And he got to help do some remodeling with Matt and Julie Beamer in England. And he did 2 trips there. And then he's gone on a youth missions trip to Brazil. And then myself, I recently got to go with Club 1040, the beautiful 1040 trip. We went to Lebanon in May of 2023, and it was phenomenal.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to ask you a little bit about that coming up. But going back to Samoa, that was your first kind of real hands-on experience with international missions?
Correct. Yeah, that was my first time to go out of the country for a missions project.
And then kind of what stood out to you as far as, I know it's easy to say what you've been like, oh, it's just so different. Is there anything that stood out to you about Samoa in general, or just being outside of the United States and seeing God move in these places?
What is beautiful was to see how hungry people were for the truth of the word. And then once they heard even one scripture, they just believed it was true and acted on it. So I believe this is why we see healings overseas immediately, where we might not see them in America, because people seem to be stuck in their head here in the United States. But when we go abroad and you tell them, hey, the Bible says this, and they're like, oh, okay, well, let's do it. And so it is very effective. They grab a hold very quickly. So I saw that the people of Samoa, that they grabbed a hold of it very quickly, and then they just they love that culture, loves family. And so when they found out they could be part of the family of God, they're like, okay, I can connect with this. So it's beautiful to see how the Bible connects to the different people groups. And, if family is what really impacts you, then they were impacted by that part of the Bible.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I kind of know this too, like traveling to different places, it almost seems like what we consider the darker the place, it's like the more the Spirit of God raises up a standard against that, and you see even more miraculous things happening
Yes.
in person, which is really cool. But that, yeah, I've seen that as well, like a lot of Latin America, honestly, in the Middle East and a lot of different places, just to focus on family and how they really do lives together. I think we're trying, some churches are really trying to do that with like small groups and stuff in the States. And, but it's so cool to see it in a different culture, and maybe they don't even have all the things that we think we need in America, but they just cling to family and community and just doing life together, which really is impactful when you come back and you want to tell everybody, come on, let's do this together.
We want to do it together. And that's why, relationships are so important. And at Club 1040, our statement is that we're a relational missionary movement reaching the unreached. And so that's what we're doing. And you can see that that's what people are hungry for. They want to have a connection. They want a relationship with God. They want a relationship with other people. And so we get to do that. That's what Club 1040 does really well.
So what you came back from Samoa, and did you want to like keep going back to Samoa, or did you know you were going to different countries?
Oh my goodness. During our time there, like I said, we were there when I was with my husband there, we were there for a week and a half. And every night when we would finish our work and you're exhausted and you go and lay across the bed there at the hotel, you're just because you're just been doing work out in the heat, and it was joyful. But I would just cry out to God, Lord, send us to Samoa. I love these people. I love this area. I love what you're doing here. I love the leadership that's here. Please send us to Samoa. And he just told us, no, you're right where I need you. And we were in our local church at the time. I knew exactly what he meant. And so it was a heart's cry. We definitely wanted to be a part of what was going on there. And so since we couldn't stay, God said, you can't stay. So then we just give. And so we give to that missionary work, because if you can't go, then you can give.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then now you found yourself a few years later working with an organization that, impacts several different countries and does so many cool things, Club 1040. And you actually got to, right now they're based, they've had several different bases in different countries, but a lot of them are based in Lebanon. And so you got to get your feet wet, so to speak, and go be there in person. What are some cool things that you did there in Lebanon when you got to visit?
Lebanon is a beautiful location. It's right on, it's got the Mediterranean Sea right there, which is just coral blue, and then it gets deeper blue. We got to go a little taxi ride out on the sea there, and it was just gorgeous.
Did you go to the Pigeon Rock?
We saw the Pigeon Rock. We didn't get to go through it on the boat, but the landscape is just, it goes very steep very quickly. So you have a little bit of land that's near the ocean, and then it goes steep quickly. So they called it the Paris of the East back when the economy and the wars weren't necessarily going on, where people could come because they could jet ski out on the water during the daytime, and then they could go snow ski the next day up in the mountains. It's just beautiful. The landscape is gorgeous, beautiful flowers everywhere. Now, there is a devastation to the structures. Lots of the structures right there in Beirut have no more windows because of the big blast that happened 2 years ago. A lot of the structures have bullet holes in them because of the wars that they've had with surrounding countries. And so you can see that there was a devastation, but the people are resilient. and they just know that there is something about that land that is precious to them. They don't want to leave. One lady I talked to, she was part of the Club 1040 team. She volunteers there with Club 1040, and she is 77, and she has lived in Lebanon all of her life. And so she's lived there through wars, through occupations, through hardships of all sorts. And she just has a super joy about being Lebanese. She's got children who live in France who have just, Mom, come please live with us. She goes, no, I love Lebanon. And so I find that was very common with the people who are there. They love being there. They love the area. And so it was just so fascinating to see their love for their country. And then if ever you offered prayer for their country, they just stopped everything and 100% wholeheartedly agreed with you, because there has to have some changes happen there to make it just more of a joyous place to live for the people of Lebanon. It's very hard right now. Their economy is very broken.
Yeah, what's crazy is I went there before and after the explosion, and was it 2020 or 2022? Can't remember, but yeah, 2023. Yeah. I don't remember, but I remember being August and having the explosion happen, and then going back over there and just seeing the devastation. But like you said, there's so much natural beauty, and then the beauty of the people that are there. But even before that, you could see remnants of bullet holes and stuff in some of the buildings and stuff from wars, like in the 80s and 90s, like just the remnants of all these people have been through. And most of them have chosen to stay. Of course, some people leave, but yeah, just that spirit of never quit and never going to give up. And it's just
they have a joy to be alive. The one lady that I was speaking of, who has lived through all these things, I said, what was it like to be in war? Like, what was the atmosphere of the people around you? She goes, we were so happy because we were alive. They were, in a bomb shelter on most nights, and they were just happy to be alive. And so it was fun to see how God even worked through those very hard times.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things, again, when you come back to the States, you're just like, man, we're so blessed to have it so easy. But it makes you want to be a part of whatever they got going on, because you want to come alongside them and just help and
right,
give a hand up,
Exactly. So that's what Club 1040 got to do during this beautiful 1040 conference. And so in May in 2023, we went to Lebanon. And the purpose was to raise up the lady leaders in Lebanon to empower them to help the Syrian refugees, to help in their churches, to grow what God was doing in their lives. And so that was powerful to be a part of. So it culminated with us. We did go to Syrian refugees and minister to them and gave them food and household products and loved on them and prayed with them. And we did some street ministry and we did some other things. But it culminated in a conference where we invited women from the local churches, and they invited their friends that maybe were churched or unchurched. And they got to come to this amazing, just gorgeous facility where we were able to have lunch together. We were able to fellowship together. But at time of the word, we had 3 speakers who just really spoke into our lives. But at this conference, we had 151 women that were there representing 75 different churches. And so it was just a huge gathering of believers and then some non-believers, because like I said, they invited their guests. But at the end of this conference, Miss Julie Beamer, I just love how she connects with people. So her and her husband, of course, are the leaders of Club 1040. And so she had us all make this huge circle. Just imagine a big ballroom and 151 ladies just hand in hand in this big circle. And she had us pray for Lebanon. And when I say pray, it wasn't like, okay, thank you, Lord. It was prayer. We were just in this beautiful time of prayer. It was tangible. The atmosphere in the room changed because the women there were being empowered to be part of the change in Lebanon. And so we know that prayer changes things. And we call Lebanon blessed. We call them blessed financially. We call it blessed with the gospel getting in there. And they took it. They took a hold of it. And so when they left that conference, they knew that Lebanon is blessed.
What's so cool too about that ministry specifically is, just in the Middle East region, especially, to be a woman is really difficult. There's still a lot of extra challenges you face, and some are treated, kind of a second-hand citizen type of a deal. And so what was it like to be able to treat these ladies kind of like superstar queens? And what did you see any getting experiences from seeing the ladies get to be a part of that feeling?
That was phenomenal. And so each of us were sitting at tables with 10 women. And so the people who came over to volunteer our time and to be part of this missionary movement. And one of the tables, there was a lady, her name is Kayla, and she came from America and was at the table. And she got to know the people of the conference. She talked to so many people. She led what's it called? The icebreaker game for all of these people. She's using an interpreter because not everybody speaks English, and she was able to pull off this amazing bubblegum blowing contest with 151 ladies who speak different languages, and it was epic. But then at her table of 10, she very much got to know each of those 10 ladies and have conversations with them. And then before the conference was over, all 10 of them had expressed interest in attending the Bible school that's starting in October there in Beirut, because they're starting Rhema Bible Training College, Beirut, in October. And so we were giving an opportunity for those people at the conference to get some information on that. All 10 of the women, so women being empowered to study the Word and to be part of their church and grow their local church, strengthen their families, strengthen their communities, strengthen their church. And so it was fun to see that happened at all the tables. These table after table after table, people getting those connections with these women. And you're right, it was beautiful to see them empowered beyond something that they would normally get on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's so cool. And, we kind of use empowered as like a keyword or a buzzword, so often, but you really think about their situation and what their lives have been like and are like, and now they have this thing that they can grab onto and make a difference. Like, hey, we matter. We can do something together and make an impact for the kingdom of God. That's literally empowering what that means. It's so cool to be a part of a ministry that's doing something like that.
Yes, because with Club 1040, I've seen it time and time again with Matt and Julie Beamer, excuse me, that relationships are the most important thing. And so when we got to build relationships at those tables of 10, Julie Beamer was just so good to let the women who were there give strength to the other women that were there. And so I love to see how that is just part of the culture of Club 1040, is that we raise people higher.
Absolutely. So I also wanted to talk about, and you're going to kind of throw some questions my way. You came in at an interesting time for Club 1040. I mean, I guess they're always interesting, but in the middle of a huge project in response to the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria and all of this, organized chaos going on. And what's that been like? And you can kind of toss some questions my way. Of course, if anybody doesn't know, I was one of the guys that got to go in and respond after that happened. And I know you guys are doing amazing things to help the people of Turkey and Syria.
Well, first of all, February 6th had the most devastating earthquake in the history of mankind. It was enormous in the Richter scale, but it happened right in the epicenter of where family upon family upon family lived. And so the buildings collapsed. It was devastation everywhere. It was the most loss of life in one day. It's hard. It was the most loss of life in one day that we lived through. I mean, wars haven't seen that much death in one day. And so what was beautiful is that Club 1040 and their teams were stationed right there in Lebanon, which is one of the countries that allows people to go into Turkey, because Turkey is surrounded by countries that they don't really talk to. And so it was a great stationing for aid because the people needed the most basic things. And so from America, what can we do? Well, we can raise funds. And so Club 1040 was vital in getting those funds. But then there were people named Brandon who were willing to go. So Brandon, you went not long after that earthquake, and you saw things. So tell me what you saw when you got to Turkey.
So the initial thing I saw was the news reports from the States, and I've flown through Turkey a lot and been on the ground there in Istanbul a little bit. So I don't have any personal like connection, but I've been on the ground there. So just something, when I saw it, it was just like, whoa, what's going on? And I saw Club 1040 actually saying, hey, we're going to respond and try to raise funds and do these things. So my immediate like just feeling in my spirit was like, I need to respond and do something. And I didn't know what I could do because I'm, here as well. And I just talked to Matt Beamer and said, hey, if you guys can think of something that I can do, I'd be happy to help, because I just feel in my spirit I need to respond. And so it started with just finding news clippings, and we did a little clip with Matt Beamer and had him explain what you guys were doing and trying to raise funds to help people and just get that immediate aid, like you said, in there, the food and the water. And so we did that video first, and then we were hearing from our friends on the ground, like the situations that was happening. And then it just came up. I think it was maybe 2 weeks later. We were on planes headed that direction. Myself from America and some other people from Turkey, and we had 2 or 3 other countries that some people came in from nearby there to help be a part of the response. And of course, I shoot video and do all that. So that was kind of my main thing, and just carry some funds and immediate aid items. But yeah, we arrived in the middle of the night, and it was I went to Istanbul first, and then had to catch another flight down south. So we flew into Adana, which is in the south part of the country, which these earthquakes happen almost near the border of Syria. I guess some of it did happen in Syria, but we were focusing on the Turkey side with our response team. And just got on the ground and did some basic meetings, like, hey, what's happening? Every day seemed like the response that was needed was changing, because the situations were changing on the ground. But got to speak with our friends that were there literally the day after it happened, and he was just saying, there's he's never seen so many like literally dead bodies. I hate to be so blunt about it, but just cars full, just trying to get.
It needs to be known that there was devastation. I'm actually curious. I don't understand why America doesn't talk about this more, because it was very devastating, and their lives were lost, and there were bodies that were there, and it's a reality, and each one of those people need to know the Jesus that we know. And so that's why it was so important that you were there to give aid. So while you're in Adana, you helped with some things there?
Yeah, so we started off there, and we kind of met to source. Like, Adana was far enough away; it's about 3.5 hour drive from the epicenter of the earthquakes, and it was just far enough away that they still had all the shops open and electricity and things, like we could get back at night and kind of reset and get our supplies there. So like, even it was funny, the first night we got into our hotel, and me and one of the other guys decided, like, we're just going to go walk around and get some food and try to find some food, literally. And no one speaks English. I mean, there's a few you can find in any big cities in the world, but no one that we knew around spoke English. And my friend, he spoke a little bit of Arabic, which is also not the main language in Turkey. So it's like, well, this is going to be fun. So yeah, we just went out and literally we're just like using our hands signals, like, food, is there anywhere to eat around here? Just, yeah, I was like, oh man, this would have been good time to have a translator. But it's kind of part of the adventure of just going out, going, all right, we're just gonna figure it out, and we know that God has already ordained our steps, so we're just kind of figuring it out. But we came across this one shop, and they heard us speaking English, I guess, and the old man that ran the shop, he went to go get his grandson, and this is kind of the crazy thing about the world we live in now is, he brought his grandson out, and his grandson could speak a little English. And we got to asking him, like telling him, like, hey, we're just looking for food. And I was, oh yeah, you go around this corner, go down that street, and then there's this guy, he cooks meat on the grill. It's like, okay, that's perfect. And then so like, how'd you learn English? And he's, oh, watching YouTube channel. All the little kids in Turkey were just like what we're doing right now. They're just finding videos and watching other people play games, and they literally
maybe Turkey will learn some English off of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So it's amazing to see that in different parts of the world that people are literally learning languages off of just watching a video from the other side of the world. So that was a cool adventure, and just getting to meet the guy that cooked the meat, like the kid said.
Yeah.
Didn't speak any English, but we kind of used our apps and stuff and communicated with him, and he had this amazing mustache. It was just like the coolest thing. So we're like, oh, hey, the meat was great. And we took a picture with him, and he just, to him, just I'm trying to think of his perspective. Like, he's just sitting out there grilling for his local community in a city like every other night. And then here come two English speaking Americans walking down his street, and sit down at his cafe and want to eat and take a picture with him. So it was definitely memorable for him too. So I just love getting into those situations when we're on these trips and stuff.
And so then you were able then to gather up food in that area, like not just for your meal, but you were gathering up food to take to the people who were closer to the epicenter.
Yeah.
So how did you find that food? How did you get it to them? How did that look?
Yeah. So the first thing we did was actually close, because we already had a connection to a group of Syrians that were refugeed from Syria from the war, and they come to Turkey, and so they've been in refugees for 10 plus years, and now they're double refugees. They were just refugeed again by an earthquake, so it's just like such hard things. And so they were actually moving out to this. It's basically like a summer camp in the kind of the woods outside of one of the cities there that was impacted. And so we had, the people that gave Club 1040 and another one of our friends that was raising money, and people gave to respond. So we literally went to Adana there where we were staying, and we found a local shop, and we probably bought half his shop. We just said, we need all the items you can give us for the best price you can give us. This is why we're using it. And they were just like, whoa, okay, this is crazy. And so they were like bringing big trash bags to fill with clothes, and we had a local friend that could communicate better, and he was writing notes of like what they were putting in there and figuring out the price. And of course the family that owned the shop were just so thrilled with us as well, because not only helping their countrymen, but obviously it was a big payday for them. So they were like bringing us tea, and we were all having tea together, and which is a very common thing in the Middle East, as you know, just that anytime you get together with friends, it's also tea time.
Also tea time.
Yeah.
But to think that like you said, the Syrian refugees who are now double refugees, it wasn't that their house had a crack in it and they were missing a window. They were missing their entire house. Like, there's no way to recover clothes out of that, because it's cement slab on top of cement slab on top of cement slab. And so you only had what you escaped with your life. So the clothes on your back is literally the only thing you have. if you happen to have a vehicle that was parked away and it had a couple things in it, that's the only thing you had. And so you guys were able to give them just the basic necessities of life, food, some clothes, and then of course just loving on them that way. That's huge. So what did you see like in their faces when you were able to give these things? Like what did it look like for you to give that away?
Yeah. So we pulled into the refugee camp now. There used to be a summer camp, and honestly, the first thing, it wasn't really, I mean, they knew we were bringing supplies. So, I mean, there's like a basic, like, little bit, the tension goes down a little bit. But just being there, and like you said, it goes back to relationships. And we came out and we had coffee with them, and they wanted to make us tea around the little campfire. And you're sitting there at a table, just smiling and interacting with the kids. Like these kids some of them have grown up in a tent. Like they were born refugees and they're still refugees again. And now they're living in tents and trying to do school. And I think just being seen, I think they felt an appreciation that they were being seen and not forgotten. I think that's the number one thing that I kind of felt, is just like they were happy we were there in person and bringing stuff, obviously, but that was just kind of part of the overall like response, was just hey, we're here and we see you and want to help. Yeah. And so that was huge. And like you said, even the buildings that were left standing, I mean, there was a bunch of them that fell, a bunch, and people don't really understand unless you think of like 9/11 or something like that with the Twin Towers, just all the concrete, boom, 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 boom. I mean, once it starts, it's just, it's over. It's so much weight falling. And even if the house hadn't fell, use my word here.
Falling.
Yeah, exactly. If it's cracked, or maybe it was not cracked, you're afraid to go back inside because maybe the next one is the one that's going to make it fall. And they had two major earthquakes, but they had aftershocks and and hundreds and thousands of them. So, and we actually got to experience one of them. We were driving one day and we parked. We didn't really have lunch, so we just had like our little peanut butter crackers or something to get us through the middle of the day, So we had parked and we were sitting in the van, and it just felt like I don't know if you've ever. I'm old school poor, so you put the gas in the car and you kind of shake it to make it settle down, make it settle down. And so that's what it kind of felt like. It's like somebody was just kind of rocking the van back and forth like that, and we were like, is someone messing with us? What's going on? It wasn't like a crazy shaking, but it was just enough that we were like, let's maybe drive to the field and away from any buildings right now. Cause I mean, man, it's just, one of the families that I interviewed, the first earthquake only, shook their house, but it didn't make it fall. And the government came in and said, oh, these houses are fine. Like they're safe. You can live in them. And they said, I don't trust them, And so they started putting up tents and stuff in their yard. And when the second earthquake hit, that's when their whole house either fell, the entire neighborhood. I was talking to a guy. He was saying that, it was, I think it hit like 8 p.m. local time. So it was getting dark, or maybe it was just had gotten dark. And so this earthquake happened. It's like your whole neighborhood just falls in an instant, all at once, not one after other. You just look around, your whole neighborhood falls.
Wow.
And talking about how heavy all the stuff is, this is something that really set with me. Was he said, I was walking to, try to find your family and stuff and make sure everybody's okay. You could hear people yelling out, like, help, 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 I'm trapped. And there's literally nothing you can do unless you have a big dozer or something. Like there's nothing in a human power can do to move all that concrete and all that stuff. So just that helpless feeling of somebody, we can't do it on our own. So that's why people like Club 1040 and the government of Turkey and other governments all over the world help respond, and organizations.
When people are crying out for help, you have to do everything you can. So there was a feeding center. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so we actually, that was kind of where we were driving around, and that's where I met that family that was telling me the story. Um, the main group that was running that was actually a group from Brazil, which was another neat, interesting part of going into this situation, is the people from all over the world were responding. So you were just getting all these really cool people that are trying to help, and just from all these different places, and they were right in the middle of the city. So it's like there was nothing, you got to think there's no water running anymore. There's no electricity or any basic needs. So there's no stores open. You can't get food. And so we showed up and we saw, and we're like, what are some things you need? Because we're just asking God, like, how do we best, use the money that people have entrusted us with and make the biggest impact. And so, yeah, we said, okay, they needed, I know they said vegetables, especially because there's just nowhere to get good vegetables. And so, our next day we went back to Adana that night, and we went to the grocery store, and we told them, like, hey, we're working with this feeding center that's responding to the earthquakes, and can you give us the best deal that you can? We have a van, we have this much money. Can you give us the most food that you can send with us to take? And they did. They I don't know exactly what they knocked off, but I mean, it's probably half price. They gave everything to us at cost. And yeah, exactly. And so we just we didn't have a plan. We just went in, responded, and said, hey, God, just lead us to the right people in the right situations, and help us respond correctly. So the next day we come back to the feeding center, and we pull up with a van, and we said, hey, we got some supplies for you guys. Where do you want us to put them? And we go to this kind of staging area and meet with the guy that we had met the day before and said what they needed, and open up the door, and they were just like in shock. They were just so thankful. And I remember one of the other guys that was working in the back, he said, he's like, this is a miracle, because like we were just praying this morning, like, God, we're running out of stuff. We need you to have like five fish and 2 loaves again, and multiply this somehow. And here you guys showed up a couple hours later. So it was really cool to be a part of like an answered prayer, just because we're praying like, hey, how can we help? Send us the right people in the right places. And they're praying, God, send us somebody. And it's cool to, when you're a part of being, the answer to somebody's prayer, just because you're being obedient to however God leads you,
Wow.
And that's again where I met that family that their whole neighborhood had crashed. And I told, I think, 3 stories from that area. A little old lady and that had escaped a big water tank. We think the water tanks from the houses, a lot of them are on the roofs there, and so that earthquake would just shake them off, and so they fall in a smaller building. It's like a bomb hitting it. And so she had literally just was in her bed and then walked out because the shaking started happening, and this water tank fell on her house and just collapsed her whole house. And the father and daughter I interviewed and told their story. The daughter and them were playing near the house, and like I said, it just gotten dark, and the earthquake happened, and she started running away from the house as it collapsed, like out of a movie, like a scene out of a movie. And her mom didn't know where she's at and was yelling out for her, and said her mom was passing out, literally, because thinking the last place she saw him, they were playing up against his house, that had just collapsed. The neighborhood collapsed. So her mom didn't see her. It was dark, dusty and dirty, because everything just had fallen and collapsed. And so she's just thinking, I just lost my kids, and literally is passing out on the ground. And just wild stuff. And I asked, what they needed, and basically said, like, obviously we need things, but I'm just so thankful we're alive. That's the number one thing. Eventually, as long as people respond, things will come back and get back online. But they were just so happy that his family was alive. And so it's just a really high emotional thing to be there and be a part of, but it's also the why we do what we do. Like you said, it's the people, it's the relationships, you know.
And there was so much devastation, but then there's also these beautiful stories of life. There are some just good people on the ground who are doing some great humanitarian things right there in Turkey. They live there. They love the people of Turkey, and they have people that surround them, a team of people, and not one of them perished in that horrible earthquake. All of their team of people were able to be collected and gathered up and then moved away from the epicenter. So there was that. And then we've seen some stories where, you know, people, adults and then children who were trapped under rubble, and it's day 1 and then it's day 2 and it's day 3. And they pulled out that one young man, and he was just a young boy, and said, how did you survive? He goes, well, this very nice man in white came and gave me water. And you're like, wow, that's Jesus. And so people are being reached in their hurt. There was a lot of loss, but there's a lot of people who, of course, lived through that. They've lost loved ones, they've lost friends. And you, as coming in with to videotape and to help be a part of this, you were just a part of being a place where you could give them hope, where you could let them know that, hey, you're not alone. You could share food and clothing with them. And then with that, you're just shining Jesus' love so that they could see that there is hope beyond the hurt. And so that's something you did really well, Brandon, as you went over there and partnered with the people who were on the ground. It's just amazing. So what else did you see there in Turkey?
So a lot of what I saw was, like I said, just it's like when a tornado hits here in the south of the United States, like just how it just wipes out whole areas. It's kind of like looking like that, but just for miles and miles and miles and miles, like through an entire town of concrete and debris. And then you think it's not even just that town; it's the next town over. It's that town that the two biggest cities are like an hour and a half away. They're both getting hit like this. And then across the border in Syria, one of the cities over there, which is several hours by car away. So like, just think of the scale of this thing. Yeah. And just the people, like you said, it was so much residential that people were homeless. People were being sent to other parts of the country. If you have family literally anywhere else, go stay with them. And then the response for Club 1040 and several others was we need another temporary but long-term solution for housing. And so I know the need was to build like almost like a insulated shed of sorts that they could live for a couple of years in versus a couple of weeks. So these tents are just thick plastic and get very hot, and they're just not meant for living through a winter and through long term. So they're building a lot of kind of like wood structures with just a metal roof, or they wanted shipping containers, anything that could be makeshifted into like a 2-year
to a shelter, sort to be longer.
Yeah. So they can live in it long enough till they can start rebuilding their city. And you can see the government and stuff was just going as fast as they could to dig new power lines and water lines and set up what we would look like if you've seen a subdivision go into like a field. Kind of what it looked like. They were literally finding just any empty space, even in the city, and just digging all new lines and as many little slots for temporary long-term housing to just get people shelter, and try to any kind of normalcy in life. So they were telling everyone, if you have a place to go, like you have to get out and just go stay with your family or anybody anywhere. So there was this man in the feeding center camp that we were at, and they said he's got family somewhere else he can fly to. He just can't get out to the airport. Well, where we were staying in Adana was about 3.5 hours away, but they had an airport. That's where we flew into. And so they said, if he can get to the airport, he's got people he can stay with and he can get out of this earthquake zone. And so would you mind, if you guys are going back there tonight, would you mind giving a ride? We said, yeah, sure, that's fine. And so this guy, he's actually was an Iranian guy, and he didn't speak any English, and he didn't speak any Arabic, and so we literally had no way to translate or conversate with him, and except maybe the apps and stuff on your phone and translate. And so he gets in the van with us, and we start on the long ride back. And it's like I said, 3.5 hours. And he's just in the back of the trip. And by this time, we've made this trip 3 or 4 days in a row. And so we're just used to sitting and listening to music. And so I told my friend, I said, let's put on some music. And I had this road trip playlist that I had, and it was like 90s country and modern music and Disney songs and old school 1970s rock and roll and just all these cool like driving road trip songs. And I just try to think of from his perspective sitting back there. He doesn't know what any of the music is saying because he doesn't speak the language, but he's just back there. We're driving an Iranian halfway through Turkey, and he's getting to experience all the 1970s and 1980s, 1990s country and 70s rock and everything from, we don't talk about Bruno and Disney stuff. So I'm sure that was, as an interesting story as I tell to other people, he's probably telling his other people in Iran and other countries that he had to take a ride to the airport in the back of a van listening to all this crazy American music. And that was about the 2-week mark that after the earthquakes hit, that we got in there. But one of our friends was on the ground there the next day and was saying literally like it looked like something out of a movie. And there's just bodies everywhere. And he saw a car that, the seats had been put down in it, and they literally stacked the car up with bodies to get them out from rubble. And I saw on the news, I was kind of watching.
Morgue then, like a makeshift morgue inside a vehicle, just a big vehicle they just used.
Yeah, and then I was watching the news, just waiting to go over there and seeing like what's happening and how they were responding and what they're doing, because there were so many bodies. They had to get them in the ground because it's a disease, factory waiting to happen with bodies decomposing. And so what they do is they would take a picture of the person, the deceased person, and give it a like a number, right, an ID number, and they just made like mass graves, and they put them in there, and they would put the number on a stick and basically put the marker on top where that grave was. And so they made a database of all these people, all these pictures with the number on it. And when people would show up and say, my aunt or uncle or mom and dad or whoever has been missing, and I'm trying to see if you've seen them, then they would let them look through all these pictures and say, yeah, that's my uncle right there. And like, okay, he's number 27853 and he's buried over here. And then they let them dig the deceased person and take them to wherever they want to be buried long term. But it's just stuff you didn't even think about. I'm glad somebody had the knowledge to even put that into play, because it's just like, it's so wild of a situation that you just don't even think of that kind of thing being needed.
Right. And that's the thing, is when the need was, it was immediate. So I started working in Club 1040 really just over a month ago now. So I'm excited about that. So during that time in February, I was not yet in the office, but I know the people in the office, and I know some of the volunteers in the office also. And they said everything stopped. Every project, every email that needed to be done, every project stopped. And everything was towards the Love Turkey, because we wanted to make sure that they were seen, they were heard, they were loved by God, but also that takes finances. And so people just got on board with that. Our partners got on board. People who'd never partnered with us before started helping with that. So they were the ones, it's really those people who made it possible for you and other people on the team to go and purchase the clothes and purchase the food and help start purchasing the storage units that they would live in, because people decided that they were going to make a difference even if they couldn't go to Turkey.
Yeah. And it really takes everybody. Like, just like I didn't even know that would be a situation to plan for. Like somebody out there did and had this idea, and then they just had to implement it. It took so many different people. The people at Feeding Center responding from Brazil, like, you just can't do it alone. It takes everybody together responding and saying, hey, we're going to, like you said, we're going to respond, but also the people know that they're being seen and not forgotten. And that's another cool thing about even filming the videos. It's like, hey, we're going to take these back to the States and we're going to show people and let them see your face and hear your voice and let them know you're a mom and a dad and a grandpa and a child. And you're just another person that God loves and we want to help and just do whatever we can, just be obedient to do whatever.
And those videos that you captured, will we be able to see in the link to this podcast? Is that how we're going to be able to see some more of that, or where do we go see more of that footage? Because that would be fantastic.
Yeah, so they're all on the Mission Field Media YouTube page. I can work on trying to get a link this as well, but if you're watching this on the YouTube page or YouTube channel, then all you gotta do is scroll down to the last few videos I've done, and all the Facebook, and they're all posted. There's 3 main ones that we were able to post online, just telling the stories from where we were at, and just some of the impact that we made. Like I said, you're only responsible for what's in your hand. Like, God, what do I do with what you've given me?
Yeah.
And so our only response is, am I going to be obedient or not? And even it's funny because I'm telling my mom now, but she called me and said, like, Brandon, like, make sure you know that this is God telling me to go. I'm like, yeah, I do. Every trip I take, really, but once like God is saying, like, hey, you need to respond, like, the only question is your answer yes or no? Am I going to be obedient or not? And so I felt to respond, and this opportunity came up, and I've loved working with Club 1040 and other things, the response to the Beirut explosion, and even before that, just going to being part of what they're doing in Lebanon. And so yeah, this came up, and I was eager to help and felt God telling me to go. So my answer was yes.
And what we've seen time and time again in the Bible and in your life right now, because we're just living, the word right now, is that somebody was given a very difficult task or a very confusing task, and when they said yes, God shows up. So there was a widow woman who had her last meal. She was going to eat it with her son, and then they were going to die. And the prophet says, hey, if you'll feed me first, right? And so she took what was in her hand, just like you said. She gave it to the prophet, and then there was an increase in her life beyond what she could ever imagine. Moses was at the Red Sea with all of the Israelites, and they were just fleeing Egypt. And God said, what do you have in your hand? And he stretched out that rod, and then God parted the sea, because God does the miracle.
Yeah.
So we do what we're supposed to do. So Brandon, you're obedient. God said, hey, go over to Turkey, make a difference, use your skills. And you did that. And then you got to see change in people's lives that were drastically different than it would have been had you not gone. And like I said, our partners and so many other people. So the people who partner with the people in Brazil helped those people go. And the partners with Club 1040 helped you and so many other people on the ground do things right there. Because when we do the simple thing that God's told us to do, then we're going to see. It can be crazy, but it's usually simple. Because go is not a crazy term. We've got airplanes that will take us places. So that's not crazy, but it is just beautiful to see how when we're obedient to God, that he always prospers that. And he did that with you in Turkey and in the trips that you've gone on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always an honor to see God respond, and you're like, wow, okay, this was all worth it. And all I had to do was say yes and put one foot in front of the other and let him guide me,
All you had to do is say yes. That's powerful. I know you were talking to Julie Beamer, did an interview with her, and her mom says, no, you can't go any further. She got to England, and the country she was going to had a coup had happened. You can't go any further. And Julie was, I can too.
Yeah.
She was not going to be detoured by what God had for her life, because she knew that God was going to bless what he told her to do. And so each of us need to go, okay, God, what are you telling me to do? And I just love that you used your gift and talent of video and of just being willing to be a person on the ground to make a difference there in Turkey.
Absolutely. And this podcast especially is about hopefully people hear these stories and they're inspired, but they want to go out and create their own stories. They want to say yes and be a part of something. And this podcast and even my ministry in general, Mission Field Media, is all about getting people involved in missions. So I would be just straight up in the wrong to close this podcast out and not give people the opportunity to respond and say yes to what you guys still have. We're doing big things in Turkey, and you still have a chance for people to respond. So how can people, they're watching this, they want to still be a part of what's going on over there? How can they say yes and respond?
Absolutely. The very first thing they should do is take the time right now to pray for the people of Turkey. They should not let that go undone, because prayer changes things. And there's no distance in prayer. So they should definitely be praying for those people and praying that they have their needs met, but also that they meet the Jesus that we know, because they don't have that opportunity, very many of them. So that's the number one thing. Pray that they have their needs met and they get to meet Jesus. Then the next thing they can do is they can help change lives in Turkey through what we have. It's a fundraiser that we have called Love Turkey. And they can do that. And in every single dollar that comes to our Love Turkey fund goes to help people on the ground in Turkey. So it is physically going to help them get clothes and food and shelter and helping them rebuild there in Turkey. So if they wanted to help with that, and then they could go to club1040.com, and there's a project button. You just click that and it's going to take you straight to Love Turkey. And that's going to show you where so many people have been able to give towards that project. We've had so many partners, and we're so thankful that they helped make a difference. And the more that comes in, the more difference we can continue to make, because people are still homeless. People are still without the basic necessities, and that needs to change. And so we can help, even a $5 donation all the way up to as many dollars as somebody wants to give. There's no limit to how small or how big the donation can be. But if you want to give today, you can help us by going to club1040.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule and joining me on this. It's a new podcast, but I think it's going to do some amazing things, and people like yourself telling these stories and just sharing what you're a part of and inviting people to be a part of it is what makes a difference.
Everybody can go. They can go in prayer, they can go in finances, and then they can physically go. So when people have chances to go, and I love that you had us on today and let me talk about Club 1040 and our trip to Beirut, and then the youth trip you took to Turkey, because people can go. But if they can't go, they can pray. And if they just desire to, we'd love to have them connect by giving.
Awesome. Thanks again for joining us on the Mission Field Media Podcast. We so appreciate you taking your time to watch and listen to what God is doing all around the world through these missionaries and ministries. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, find us on the social media app to follow us there, and tell all your friends about it. We couldn't do this without the listeners like you guys and our sponsors. Thank you so much, and looking forward to having you join us again on the Mission Field Media Podcast.